we go. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Daf Mem Zayin in Pesachim. Mem Zayin is, of course, Moz, which the Shulchan Aruch says is a banana. So today's banana day in Daf Yomi, and Moz, it's Arabic. So Shulchan Aruch brings that, and we're starting on the very bottom of Mem Vav Amud Beis, the very last line of Mem Vav. And Yehuda yesterday taught us the concept of Hoil. Hoil means since, and this is a very famous concept. We just call it Hoil. But the real concept of it is Hoel umiklai leorchim chazile. Because guests might come, it's fitting for him. So what we're talking about? We're talking about cooking on Yom Tov. Now you might ask me, we can cook on Yom Tov. We already know that we can cook because ochel nefesh, cooking food for people, is mutter on Yom Tov. Yom Tov is not like Shabbat where we can't cook. We can cook on Yom Tov. So what we're talking about is cooking more, cooking extra food on Yom Tov. If you've already had your Seudah on Yom Tov, and it happens to be Erev Shabbos. So we allow you to cook more. This was yesterday's daf we're discussing. We're discussing the parameters of Hoel because we're going to continue on Hoel today. Hoel, since guests might show up, you can have in mind, well, guests are going to show up. I need to have some food available for them. So Hoel, since guests might come, you can cook more on Yom Tov, even though you're going to eat it on Shabbat. You're going to eat it that night. You're going to have nice, fresh food for Shabbat, so you can cook right now on Yom Tov. And this is brought in halacha. We had this whole argument yesterday if preparing Erev Shabbat, preparing would be a deraita or derabanan. So if it's a derabanan, you could rely on the Erev Tavshilin. And then if it's deraita, you need this concept of Hoel. And the Shulchan Aruch brings this halacha in Taf Kuf Chaf Zayin. We're going to start off with a little halacha because Hoel is very important. Halacha l'maaseh. Yom Tov Shchalil be'erev Shabbat. You have Yom Tov erev Shabbat. Lo yivashel betchila letzorch Shabbat. You shouldn't cook lechatchila for the needs of Shabbat. Bekedera b'ifnei atzma. One pot. Aval mivashel hu kama kedera leYom Tov. You can make a lot of food for Yom Tov. So you're cooking really for Yom Tov. Im hoter l'Shabbat. And if there's extra, you're cooking a lot of food. There's extra for Shabbat. Great. The erev mivashel betchila Shabbat. And if you make an erev tavshilin, you can cook lechatchila for Shabbat. And the Mishnah Brewer brings in Gimel says the Midaraita Amrin and Hoel. We say deraisa, we say this because of Hoel. Since guests might come, Hoel ilu miklai orchim chazile. Guests might show up. It's fitting for him now. Le Yom Tov gufa, for Yom Tov itself. So really, he has in mind he's cooking for Yom Tov because guests could show up on Yom Tov. And the Mishnah Berurah brings a important concept. Yizaher lahaktim hachana machal l'Shabbat. You shouldn't be doing this at the last minute on Yom Tov. On Friday afternoon, it's the second day of Yom Tov. You should not be cooking right before Shkia. You shouldn't be cooking right before Hadlachas Neiros. You should finish cooking when the day there's still a lot of the day left. And at least should be cooked a third if it's sitting there getting cooked. And he says they were nahagu lahaktim tefillas arvis. They would daven early, so they would have time to really be prepared, be done cooking. He says b'shadat chak, even at the last minute you could be cooking because really guests could show up at any time. So that's the halacha l'maaseh. Is you could rely on this hoil midiraita to be cooking because guests might come. That's what you have in mind. The Tosfot at the bottom, he does say you can't take hoel to an extreme. You can't say, well, somebody might get sick on Shabbat, so let's allow cooking on Shabbat because someone might get sick. You can't go to the extreme. And so the poskim say, really, in a place where guests really aren't going to show up, if someone's, doesn't get visitors, there's no one there, there's a pandemic, maybe you shouldn't rely on hoel. But they say, really, because the Gemara allows it, you can allow it even if guests aren't going to show up. But what you're having in mind is really people might show up. People might show up to shmooze, and what do? You invite them in. Guests might come up, but what does a Jew do when his friend comes over? You invite him in, you give him what to eat, and this is an amazing concept that the Meshech Chochma brings. There's a Gemara in Yuma Daf Chav Ches that says Avraham kept the entire Torah. This is before Matan Torah, Rabosai. So before the Torah was given, Avraham kept the entire Torah. It says Toratai. It says two Torahs: the Torah Shebektav, the Torah Shebal Peh. So what's the example? It says Avraham kept even Erev Tavshilin. That's the example given of the Derabanan that Avraham Avinu kept. And the Meshech Chochma brings another chazal by Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu gets to Shechem and he sets up a border. He sets up a Techum. He sets up the Techum Shabbat. That's another Derabanan that Yaakov kept. So Meshech Chochma explains what's the difference. Yaakov Avinu kept Erev Tavshilin so he could cook for the guests. So he could cook on Yom Tov for the guests. Because what does Avraham do? The midah of Avraham is Omer me'at aseh harbe. You say a little bit and you do a lot. The Gemara explains in Bava Metzia, he said, listen, I'll give you, rest here and I'll give you a little bit of bread. What does he do? Does he bring bread? No, he brings a 3-course meal, 5-course meal. It's these runs, and he brings a nice fat animal, he serves them tongue with mustard. Beautiful, beautiful. So the Midah of Abraham is such a chesed, he needs an Erev Tavshilin so he can cook for guests. Whenever guests show up, he has to have fresh, hot food for them because he's trying to bring people in. He's trying to bring people in and teach them about Ribbono Shel Olam. That's the Midah of Abraham, is this chesed. Through food, you're going to teach them about Hashem and how to bless the one who gave you the food. But Yaakov Avinu, he kept the Erev Techumin. He set the Techum Shabbat, the boundaries, because by Yaakov, he now has the 12 tribes. Actually, he had 11 tribes at this time, but he was about to get to 12. He was setting boundaries. He says, I am the leader of the Jewish tribe now. And we have to have boundaries between the Jewish people and other people. We have to have a tchum. We have to have a limit. The Jews can only travel this far on Shabbat. The Jews have to have set limits. So that's why the Meshech Chocham explains that the Chazal tell us that Avram Avinu kept the Erev Tavshilin and Yaakov the Erev Techumin. It's beautiful. So now we are caught up with Hoil, the Halacha Lamaisa of Erev Tavshilin. And Hoil, since guests might come, we allow cooking on Yom Tov, because you need food for Yom Tov. You need food. That's what Jews do. We give food to people, Baruch Hashem, and we should never go hungry. So on the very last line of Mem Vav, another example of Hoil. Today we bring a kasha on the concept of Hoil, lechem aponim, from the lechem aponim, the bread of faces. This is the showbread put on the shulchan. Nechal letisha le'asara lachad asar. It can be eaten on the 9th, the 10th, or the 11th day. Lo pacha, lo yoter, never less and never more. So the bread, we remember, was put on the shulchan in the Beis HaMikdash, in the building of the temple, and every Shabbat they would switch it out. They would put on new loaves every Shabbat and take off the 12 old loaves and divide them up for the Kohanim, and the Kohanim would eat them on that Shabbat, and the new loaves would be there. And there was a miracle done with the Shulchan that they would stay fresh and hot and steaming and just like they were just made for the entire week. So they would show the people coming for Yom Tov, they would show them the Shulchan, and they would see that it was hot, nice and hot and steaming because Hashem was doing a miracle, that they should have fresh bread for the Kohanim. But every week it was switched. It was really week-old bread, so it switched it every Shabbat. So Ketzad, how does it work? Kedarko. The normal way, Latisha, it's normally eaten on the 9th day. You understand, we say Latisha is the 9th day. Nefa be'erev Shabbat, that means it was baked on Erev Shabbat on Friday, and Nechal b'Shabbat, and it was eaten on Shabbat. So it's 8 days later, but it's on the 9th day. Like we say, the bris is on the 8th day, but it's the same day of the week. The kid's born on Thursday, and B'Shat Tov HaMitzlachas, he has the bris on Thursday. So here too, it's baked on Friday, eaten on Saturday, that's on the 9th day. That's Latisha. What if Chal Yom Tov Liyot be'erev Shabbat? If Yom Tov is on Friday, Nechal b'Shabbat, and then it's eaten on Shabbat Le'asara, on the 10th day, because we're baking it on Erev Yom Tov. We're baking the bread on Thursday, and then eating it on Saturday, on the 10th day. Shnei Yomim Tovim Shel Rosh Hashanah. If it's Rosh Hashanah, Thursday, Friday, then Nechal Le'Shabbat, and you're eating it on Shabbat, that's Lachad Asar, that's on the 11th day. Lefisha Eina Doche Lo et Shabbat Velo et Hayom Tov. So, because baking the lechem apanim, where it's not doche Shabbat, you can't do it on Shabbat, and you can't do it on Yom Tov. Oh, so what about Hoil? If you're going to tell us that the needs of Shabbos can be done on Yom Tov, amai lo dache Yom Tov. Why isn't it dache Yom Tov? Why couldn't we bake the lechem apanim on Yom Tov? Hoil. We should say Hoil. But guests might come. Well, this is guests. You're not going to feed lechem apanim to the guests. So it's actually it happened once, something like this, by David HaMelech in Nov. David HaMelech in Nov, they had nothing else to give him. They gave him some sort of menachos, or some sort of sacrificial bread, because otherwise he was going to die. So the Kohanim gave him, he wasn't really a guest, he was really in Sakana, and they thought he was doing a mission for the king, a secret mission. So they gave him in Nov Ira Kohanim. But that's a whole other story. But usually you wouldn't give lechem upon him to guests, but they're saying, if you're telling me this concept of Hoil, that the needs of Shabbos can be doche Yom Tov, you should allow baking lechem upon him, even on Yom Tov. It should always be eaten on the 9th day. There shouldn't be a problem. So the Rashi points out something that you might have thought of. If the 10th day, you're telling me you're going to eat it on the 10th day, and Rosh Hashanah is 10 days before, well, what's 10 days after Rosh Hashanah? Yom Kippur, Shkoyach. So how are they eating on Yom Kippur? So Rashi says their calendar, he brings this concept that what happened, the Eidim came after Mincha. The Eidim for Rosh Chodesh, which is Rosh Hashanah, came after Mincha on the very last day of Elul. So what's going on is we're not is in the calendar how it used to be. We don't do this anymore. Nowadays, Rosh Hashanah is the first day of Tishrei and the second day of Tishrei. But back then, if the Adim who saw the moon came very late in the day, they came after the time of Mincha on the last day of Elul, then that day was still the last day of Elul. They would make Elul Me'ubar. So it would be a 30-day month of Elul, and the last day of Rosh Hashanah, the first day of Rosh Hashanah would be the last day of Elul, would be the 30th of Elul, and then the second day of Rosh Hashanah would be the first day of Tishrei. Mm-hmm. So then the 10th day would be Erev Yom Kippur. So they'd be eating the lechem, that Shabbat would be Erev Yom Kippur, and they could actually eat the bread. We don't do this nowadays. Our calendar is more fixed. He says, Inami Havi, this is in the Rashi, Inami Havi Yom Tzom. It really was, the 10th day was really Yom Kippur. And they ate it for their break the fast. So they would eat the lechem upon him after the Chavi Nechol Yom V'Layla. Because Kodshim, we understand the night follows after the day. So if something could be eaten that day, it could be eaten the following night. So maybe they saved it for the tzom. And he says, interestingly, that in the Rashi, says, Bizman lechem upon him, in the time of lechem upon him, lo hayu shnei yomim tovim shagoliyu. There wasn't 2-day Yom Tov. Rosh Hashanah was the only exception, and it was only based on the fact that Adim might come late in the day. Otherwise, Rosh Hashanah would be a 1-day Yom Tov, Rabbi said. But if Adim might come late, to say we saw the new Chodesh, we saw the new moon, and it's Rosh Chodesh, so we have to keep 2 days of Kedusha based on the fact that maybe the Adim are going to come today, or maybe they're going to come tomorrow. They came yesterday, and we have to keep it today and yesterday. So now the calendar is fixed, but it's not like this. But the Rashi is very interesting to say there was no 2-day Yom Tov in the time of Lechem Panim, except for this possibility of Rosh Hashanah. So they always kept Rosh Hashanah like this, 2 days, like the Gemara said. Okay, good. So anyway, the concept is Hoel. We have a kash in the concept of Hoel to say you could we can't bake Lechem Panim on Yom Tov, but why not? Why wouldn't baking on Yom Tov for the needs of Shabbat docha Yom Tov? Amrle Shvus Krova Hitiru Shvus Rachoka Lo Hitiru. A shvut is a dirabanan. So this is only a dirabanan, but a shvut krova we did allow. And the Rashi explains shvut krova is shel yom tov atzma or shel osa shabbat atzma. Shetzrich lebo yom. So b'mikdash yitzros. So we have the concept b'mikdash. We allow shvut. We allow them to do a dirabanan on Shabbat or Yom Tov for the tzorich of the avoda. But that's only for the same day. It's only for same day service. Rabbi say that we allow dirabanans in the mikdash. So this is for 8 days later, for on the 9th day or on the 10th day. So we're not going to allow it for a week later. The Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, and in the opinion of Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, to Amar Mishum Rabbi Shimon ben Eskan, he says in the name of Rabbi Shimon ben Eskan, and the Skan is the deputy Kohen Gadol. So this is someone who had inside information about the temple. Doches Yom Tov. He did say that baking lechem apanim was doche Yom Tov. It was allowed in Yom Tov. Eino doche at Yom Tov, but it does not doche Yom Tzom. So if it was Yom Kippur, you could not bake lechem hapanim on Yom Kippur. And Rashi points out, as we know, that Yom Kippur is different. Delo huterbo ochel nefesh. Aval Yom Tov huterbo ochel nefesh. So Yom Kippur is a bit like Shabbat, in that all the malacha are asur, even ochel nefesh. Mashin in Yom Tov, we do allow ochel nefesh. Ma'ikal meimer. So for Rabbi Shimon, what can we say? He allows baking on Yom Tov as long as it wasn't on Yom Kippur. B'ha pligi. Mar savar shvus krova hitiru, shvus rahoka lo hitiru. So he holds that you only allow the shvus krova and not a shvus rahoka. That's Rabbi Shimon Gamliel says you didn't allow this. Mar savar shvus rahoka nami hitiru. He says no, you even allowed shvus rahoka. That was Rabbi Shimon Gamliel in the name of the Skan, that you would allow a shvus on Yom Tov, not on Yom Kippur, but on Yom Tov, even though you're going to eat it 9 days later, which is the shvus rahoka. It's over a week later. Masiv Rav Mari. Rav Mari has another kasha on Hol. So we haven't disproven the concept of Hol. Shtei halechem, the 2 breads. These 2 breads are the special carbon of Shavuos. Einu nechalos lo pachos mishnayim. They're not eaten less than the 2nd day. Lo yiter al shlosha, and not more than the 3rd day. So it's either the next day from when they're baked or 2 days after. Ketzad. So how does this work? We're going to see a similar concept to the lechem apanim by the bread of Shavuos. Na'afos Erev Yom Tov, you would bake them Erev Yom Tov. Nechalas le Yom Tov, and eat them the next day on Yom Tov, on Shavuos, on Atzeres. The Shnayim, Chal Yom Tov lios achar Shabbat. But what if Yom Tov is on Sunday? Yom Tov is the day after Shabbat, so you're not going to bake the Shtei Lechem on Shabbat itself, you're going to bake it Erev Shabbat. You bake it on Friday and eat it on Sunday. Nechalas le Yom Tov l'shlosha, that's on the 3rd day. So from Friday, Saturday, Sunday, it's on the 3rd day, you'll be eating the Shtei Lechem. Because baking lechem panim is not doche Shabbat or Yom Tov. We're not going to do it on Yom Tov itself, and we're not going to do it on Shabbat. If you're going to tell us this hoil concept, this you could bake on Yom Tov itself for the needs of Shabbat. Hash the Shabbat b'Yom Tov shari the Yom Tov b'Yom Tov mibai. So you're going to tell me if you allow baking on Yom Tov for the needs of Shabbat, baking on Yom Tov for the needs of Yom Tov itself, wouldn't you allow that? Wouldn't you let us? We understand if Erev Yom Tov is Shabbat and Shavuos is on Sunday, why don't we let you bake the bread on Sunday? You're baking bread. It's ochel nefesh, right? We allow ochel nefesh. We allow baking and cooking on Yom Tov for Yom Tov atzma, and even with Hawil, even Yom Tov for Shabbat. So kol shegen, you should allow baking the shtei lechem on Yom Tov for Yom Tov. Shiny chasav, it's different there. Damakra lechem. The pasuk says lechem. It's for you that you're allowed to bake for yourself. The pasuk says, "B'yom rishon mikra kodesh, b'yom shvi mikra kodesh ye lachem, kol malacha lo yaseh v'hem, ach asher yachel l'chol nefesh hu levado yaseh lachem." So we see this lachem twice for you, davka, and we see it by ochel nefesh. The ochel nefesh has to be lachem. So the Gemara as a drasha, lachem v'lo legavoa. This is amazing drasha, but it's like for you, you can cook for your own food needs, but not for legavoa. Legavoa means the high one, means Hashem. So you could cook for yourself on Yom Tov, but not for Hashem. It sounds amazing, it sounds bizarre. So first of all, the shtei lechem was eaten by Kohanim, but the main point of the shtei lechem wasn't to feed the Kohanim. You're not trying to feed the Kohanim and fatten them up on Yom Tov. It was really a carbon. It happens to be this carbon has to be eaten by Kohanim, but the real point of the shtei lechem was the carbon for Shavuos. And we say it's the drasha is lachem, so you could cook for yourself. It's as if Hashem is saying, here, Am Yisrael, have this Yom Tov, and you take care of yourself. Don't worry about me. It's like as if Hashem is saying, listen, I'll eat bread that's a day or two old. The carbon could be a day or two old, but for you should have fresh bread. You should have fresh food. Baruch Hashem, enjoy the Yom Tov. So it's amazing. It's like a chesed. It's like a kiss from Ribbono Shel Olam to Am Yisrael for this drasha. Lechem, enjoy. For you, I'm okay. For you, enjoy. Rabbi Shimon Gamliel, Rabbi Shimon ben Esgan, Doche es Yom Tov. So in this opinion we saw by the Lechem Apanim, he says that baking on Yom Tov, baking the bread or the karbanos on Yom Tov was allowed for the Yom Tov. Michael Meimar, so what would you say? So you wouldn't say Lechem. Savar Loka Abba Shol, so what would he do with Lechem? To Amar Lechem v'lo le'nochrim. That you can bake and you can cook on Yom Tov for Lechem, as in for the Jewish people, but not for non-Jewish people. So this could actually come up, Lamaisa, if you're going to have guests over who are not Jewish, and you're cooking on Yom Tov. So really, what can you do? You can't cook for them because it's lachem. You can only cook for Am Yisrael, so you cook more. So this is the eitzah in the Mishnah. You cook more. You cook additional food. The same thing if you're cooking on Yom Tov because it's Erev Shabbat. You cook more. You cook extra. Yeah, you make extra food for the Jews. You make extra food for yourself. Your Marbe B'Shulo. If you're going to make one, you might as well make 5. And Jews get hungry. Guests stop by. Hawil. So he says, lechem v'lo nochrim. And the Rambam adds even not for klovim. So you can't cook on Yom Tov for your animals also. So if you have pets, don't cook for them on Yom Tov. You cook Erev Yom Tov. But for yourselves, you cook. So Baruch Hashem, Yom Tov is for the Am Yisrael to enjoy. Good. Another kash on Ha'il. Shalach le Rav Chista le Rabba biyad Rav Acha bar Rav Huna. So he sent a kasha to him. Mi amrinan Ha'il. Do we really say Ha'il? Hatnan. There's a Mishnah. Yesh chorish telem echad. Someone could plow one furrow in the ground. Chayavin olei mishum shmona lavin, and he's chayav 8 isurim. He's chayav. We're going to give him malchus 8 times. He's done 8 different averas. This is the Avera Olympics coming soon to a town near you. God forbid. But what is he doing? What's he doing to get 8 lavin? A chorish b'shor v'chamor. He's plowing with an ox and a donkey. That's kilayim. That's you can't plow with 2 different species. It's a tircha for the animals. They're gonna have a hard time with it, or they're gonna see the cow chewing its cud and get envious. There's a lot of reasons brought down for this. It's a chesed to the animals. We don't mix them up. The hen mukdashin, and these are holy animals. So we understand the holy cow. Holy cow we get. It's a bechor, so it's kodesh merechem. A chamor. How do you get a holy chamor? A chamor is a donkey. Anyone know? Beautiful. Rashi says bedek abayis. You can be makdish your chamor to the temple, but not as a carbon. Don't do that. That doesn't work. It's bedek abayis. The financial value of your chamor is kodesh lebedek abayis. So if he plows with this, it's me'ilah rabasa. We discussed me'ilah a little bit, and me'ilah is using consecrated items. So how could a donkey be kodesh? It's bedek abayis, so you cannot plow with it.
the kilayim, and he's plowing for the needs of kilayim. So we had kilay behema. He has the shore and the chamor together, and he's plowing for kilayim. He's plowing in his vineyard with his wheat. So he planted wheat, so he planted barley, oats in his vineyard along with his vines. That's kilay kerem. It's a mixture of normal food, non-grape food with your vineyard, and that's asur deraisa. Kilai Kerem, it even says, turning over. And Shvius, it was on Shvius when you're not allowed to do any plowing, you're not allowed to do any agricultural labor that will enhance the growth. You can do, we're going to find out in Mod Katan, you can do certain things to keep your plants alive and for their health, but you can't do it to enhance their growth. So he's plowing to enhance the growth of his Kilai Kerem with the shore and the chamor that are Makdoshin. And it's Yom Tov, and it's B'Yom Tov. So we're going to see that makes a difference. And also, he's a Kohen v'Nazir. He's not only a Kohen, he's also a Nazir, and it's a base of Tuma. And there's Tuma in this field. It's next to a cemetery. There's some bones there. And we've seen issues where even if there's a kever lost in a field, the Kohen or the Nazir can't go in there because there's bones or there's bone fragments. And he has to be very careful not to go in there. So he's got 8 different Isurim. But one of these, Rabbi Osai, was an Isur of Yom Tov. He's plowing on Yom Tov. V'yamrin on Hoil, if we say the concept of Hoil, that we allow doing malachas on Yom Tov because guests might come, he might need food. So listen to this, it's beautiful. Acharei shelo l'chayiv, he shouldn't be chayiv on the plowing on Yom Tov. Hoil v'chazi l'kisui dam tzipor, because he might need this dirt, he's plowing up dirt from the hard ground, he might need this dirt to cover up the blood of a bird. Because when you shecht a chaya or an oaf, a wild animal or a bird, you need to cover up the dam. Kisui dam ba'afar. There's actually a bracha we make. Achahus dam be'afar. You have to cover up the blood in dirt. So they shech the animal, and the first blood that comes out, somebody takes the dirt and covers it up. Usually the shochet gets kadima for this, so the shochet gets to cover it up or gets to pick who does it. Rabbi Goldface told me a story once in Yeshiva Lane. It was, they're doing kaparis, and he shechted a chicken, and someone jumped in there and covered up the dam with dirt. And he said, Yomi asar zuhuvim, you stole my mitzvah. The guy just jumped up and did the mitzvah without permission. So he said as a joke, you owe me 10 gold coins if you steal someone's mitzvah. That's what the Gemara says. But it's an important mitzvah we don't get to do very often. But if you're doing kaparis, you could find a way to cover up the dam. It's an important mitzvah. We do cover the dam of chaya and oaf. Interestingly, they don't go on the mizbeach. So a behema, a holy cow, that goes on the mizbeach. The dam goes on the mizbeach. So the dam is used for something holy. But by the birds and the wild beasts, their dam never goes on the mizbeach. So they're never used for that. So we have an inyan to cover up their dam. It goes back in the earth. It's a very kabbalistic inyan. I'm not a mekubal. I don't know what the details, but there's a lot going on there. So here, he should only be high of 7 things instead of 8 things because his plowing could be getting dirt to cover up the dam of the chicken he's shechting because guests might come. So he should be potter for that one. He's only high of 7 times, not 8. Amar of Papa Bar Shmuel, but Avani Merkuzaled. So he's plowing up shards. He's plowing up like clumps of dirt that are kind of they're Merkuzalot is they're sort of I don't know the right word, but they're sort of sharp. They're kind of pointed stones. We'll call them pointed clods of earth. It's actually the same word. Avani Merkuzalot is in Shabbat Mem Gimel, and that was the famous sugya of toilet paper. That Baruch Hashem, we have such a zechus to have toilet paper these days because they used to use an Evan Merkuzal. They used to use a sort of pointed stone as toilet paper. And the Gemara over there in Shabbat is saying, well, they're not muksa because it's needed for kavod abrius, because they need it to go to the bathroom, so these stones are not muksa. They can be moved on Shabbat because they have this human dignity overrides stones being muksa because you need them for toilet paper. So Baruch Hashem for toilet paper. It's really a kiss from Ribono Shel Olam. So it's royus lekoshan. So if they're pointed clods of dirt, he could grind them down. Kadisha b'Yom Tov mishari. Could you really grind down hard dirt on Yom Tov? Royus lekoshan the kalachar yad. So deraisa really, you could grind it down kalachar yad, not using a grinder. Using the back of the hand, using an abnormal method, because he needs the dirt to kisu yadam for his chicken, for his guests. So it's bitsunma. So it's really in rocky soil. Tsunma is rocky. Tsunma barzaria. Can you even plant your kilayim in rocky ground? So what's going on? Tsunma milmala. It's rocky on top. That's why he's plowing. Afredituach milmata. It's soft ground underneath. So he's trying to make his kilayim grow. This Kohen Nazir using his kilai behema, using his mukdashin, his shor v'chamor yachtav. He's plowing through rocky grounds to get to the soft ground underneath for his kilaim on Yom Tov. Tepek mishum afer tituach. So then he can get his afer tituach underneath. So what does he need? The top level. Ela amar mar baravashi betina. So it's muddy. So tina bar zriyahu. So it's mud. You can plant in mud. Bimatunta. So it's kind of soft. It's soft mud. It's mud that's plantable mud. So he can kind of get out of this. So with this plowing, he could still be high of 8 times because the plowing he's doing is not really for the needs of dirt, for kisui adam, of the chicken, which is for the needs of the guests in Yontav, because really the soil is either too rocky or it's too muddy here, and the mud is not really good for kisui adam. But afar has to be really mamish afar, has to be mamish dirt, not mud. Eisive abaye. So here's another kasha on hoil. Amavasho gid hanasha. Somebody cooks the gid hanasha becholov, in milk, biyomtov, on yomtov. Ve'ochlo, and then he eats the gid hanasha in milk. It's like a gid hanasha cheeseburger. Loke chamesh, we're going to give him 5 different malkas. There's 5 different isurim. What are they? Loke mishum avashal gid biyomtov. So it's loke because he's cooking the gid on yomtov, and the gid is also loke mishum ochel gid, and he gets malkas for eating the gid. Loke mishum avashal basar b'cholov, and he gets malkas for eating meat and milk together. Cooking meat and milk together, and for eating. So there's 2 different prohibitions here. Cooking milk and meat together, that gets you a malchus, that's usher, and eating it also gets you a malchus. Loke mishum havara, and he's also loke for starting up the fire, for adding to the fire, fanning the fire on yontav. Iyamrin and hoel, who's a hoel, a havar lo chayev, he shouldn't be chayev for making the fire. So we understand the gid hanasha is chayev. Actually, do we understand? So there's a whole parak, we're going to do a little chazara of chulin. There's a whole parak in chulin called gid hanasha. So we'll look over there, but our al regel achas chazara is, there's a machlokes there, if the gid is noten tam, if it's noisen tam, they say, if it gives a taste. Because what is the gid anyway? It's a sinew, it's like a tendon. Is that the right word, a tendon? And if you've ever eaten a tendon, I don't know, but it doesn't have its own flavor really. So there's a machlokes in the parak gid hanasha, if the gid itself is like eitz ba'alma, if it's like wood, it has no taste, or if it has its own taste. And some is opinion there that really the gid doesn't have its own taste really, but the chaylev of a gid, the fats that are around the gid, the sort of the sheath of it, does have a taste, and that's the taste that's usher that we're talking about, and that would have the taste of meat. So then you can come on to being mevashal basar b'chalav, cooking meat and milk together, because they do have this taste. But that's our chazar regel achas, on one leg about the gid hanasha, if it's no tentam, but the gid hanasha is usher, of course, because of Yaakov Avinu. And it's an amazing lesson that the Mefarshim say is that Yaakov had a severe injury. He fought the Malach of Esav, and he was hit. His thigh was dislocated at the gid hanasha. He was severely injured. But then what happens after he prevails? V'zarcha shemesh. The pasuk says the sun shined down on him and it healed him, and he was able to walk back. He was able to rejoin his tribe. He was able to rejoin his people even after his injury to the gid hanasha, because the Hashem shined the light on him. And this, they say, is a mashal to the Am Yisrael and Galut, is that really in Galut we suffer injuries, and it's not ideal, and it's not the best situation. But then what's going to happen is Hashem is going to shine the light on us. The light of redemption, the light of messianic redemption is coming. It's going to shine on us, and it's going to heal us from all of these issues, all of these problems, and we're going to be able to walk back to Eretz Yisrael on our own power, God willing. We're going to have a complete refuah. And sometimes, Baruch Hashem, we're in Golis, you're supposed to say, but Baruch Hashem, we're in a Golis where we can learn together, we have plenty to eat, we have a good situation, Baruch Hashem, we're okay right now. So sometimes we forget it's a Golis, and then Hashem has to remind us by, making certain changes in the political, economic, and medical framework of the Golis that we're in. So sometimes, we look around and we realize Hashem is making these changes in the world to remind Am Yisrael. Everything that happens in the world is for the needs of Am Yisrael. So Hashem needs to remind us that this is a golut, and there are problems here, but just like Hashem healed Yaakov Avinu in the gid hanasha, Hashem is going to heal Am Yisrael and bring us back and reunify us, with the light. Zarchala Hashemesh. So that's the musar from the gid hanasha. But here this guy's cooking the gid hanasha on Yom Tov, and he's chayav 5 different things. But if we say the concept of hoil, that we allow cooking on Yom Tov, because guests might come, you need to make a fire for them, you need to cook for them. So hoel should wipe out this lashes, this law of havara, of lighting the fire. So Ha'il Havar Lo Chayiv. So Ha'il the Chazile L'Tzorke Hazile. Because he could need it for himself, he could need it for guests also. So Apik Havara. So let's take out Havara from the list of 5 lavin this fellow did. Fa'il Gidanasha, and we'll add it was Gidanasha Shel Nevela. It was also a Nevela. So it wasn't only a Gidanasha. So Gidanasha from a kosher animal is also, but this is Gidanasha for Nevela. So he's chayiv on the Gidanasha for eating that, and he's also chayiv for eating a Nevela. That's a separate lav. V'hatane Rav Chia Lokin Shtaim. Rav Chia said he's Lokish Shtaim. He gets Shtaim Alachi Lasso. He gets 2 different ones for eating, V'shalosh Al Bishulo, and 3 different ones for cooking. So according to this opinion, the 2 for eating would be he's eating basar b'chalav because he cooked it with milk, and he's eating the gidanasha. So he gets a malchus for gidanasha, and 3 for the havara, for the cooking of the meat and the milk, and for the cooking the gid, and for cooking on Yom Tov. So havara we see would be in the list according to this opinion. So if you're going to tell me it was gid shel nevela, it would be 3 different malchus for eating this creature. Ela apik havara, so we'll take a havara, ayel atse muksa, and we'll put in, he used firewood that was muksa. So instead of being chayev malchus for lighting the fire on Yom Tov, he's chayev malchus for muksa. The Gemara asks, muksa deraisa? Is muksa a deraisa? We've talked a lot on Shabbat, in the Gemara in Shabbat, the Gemara in Eruvin, about muksa, and is muksa deraisa? It seems that the lemaskana muksa was the rabbanan. So in the opinion of Rabbah, he says, yes, muksa is a deraisa. He explains, Amar le'in, yes, muksa is deraisa. This is in his opinion. Didn't pass it like this. The pasuk says, V'haya b'yom shishi, was on the 6th day, Hechinu es asher yaviu, and they prepared what they brought. So the pasuk says, V'haya b'yom shishi, Hechinu et asher yaviu, V'haya mishne al asher yilkatu yom yom. It's talking about the man. So the manna fell from Shemayim, and Moshe told them, it's not going to fall tomorrow, so go out and prepare what you need for Shabbat. So prepare what you're going to bring. So Moshe told them, go out, get the man, and prepare it for the next day. So this implies, Rashi explains, Hechinu b'mezuma, it has to be invited, has to be prepared for Shabbat. Shemizamen kol tzorcho hayom. So you have to prepare whatever you need for that day. V'yomer davar zeh letzorech hayom. You have to say, so Rashi, I think, is pointing out that you don't necessarily have to cook it, because the man, you could eat it raw. It could taste like anything you want. You know, it looked like a coriander, but it could taste like anything. So it was very helpful in that way. But sometimes they would grind it up, make it into bread. Sometimes they would cook it. Sometimes they eat it raw. So Rashi's pointing out you only have to prepare it by designating orally. V'yomer davar zeh letzorech hayom. You only have to say this is prepared for Shabbat. So we see this too by muksa for Shabbat, by other things. If you say, well, I'm going to use this on Shabbat, that's good enough. If you're going to use your hammer on Shabbat to open nuts, that's good enough. We've been learning in Hilchot Muksa, you could use a hammer for your nuts. Letzorech gufo. That's because you need the hammer to open your walnuts. But an oral designation, Rashi says, is good enough for the man, because they didn't always cook it. Sometimes it was raw, sometimes cooked, sometimes ground up. So that's hechinu as asher yaviu ve'asharasa mehacha. Rabbah says the ashara, the warning against taking muksa on Shabbos, is from here. Melo tasei kol malacha. It's this umbrella isser of don't do any malacha. So he seems to say that muksa is a malacha on Shabbat. We don't pass it like that, but it's a beautiful thing. Echinu as asher yaviu. It's a big inyan to prepare. Like we said, we started off this year hoil. It's a big inyan to prepare even on Yom Tov for Shabbat. Even on Yom Tov, you could cook more. You could do extra for the needs of Shabbat. With your Erev Tavshilin, you could do more on Yom Tov for Shabbat. But on any Shabbat, any Erev Shabbat, it's an interesting concept that we're Shomer Shabbat, we keep Shabbat, but are we Shomer Erev Shabbat? Something Rabbi Silber says is going into Shabbat with a menucha, with preparation done, with things already set in motion, so we're not running around at the last minute right before candle lighting trying to set up the candles and set up the slow cooker and set up the cholent. It's good to keep Erev Shabbat also. So this is kind of the concept of Rabbah saying Muksus deraisa from this Hechinu asher yaviu. Be ready. This is the message of Moshe Rabbeinu. Go out, get your man, get a double dose of man today on Friday, and be ready. Prepare it. Grind it up if you want, cook it if you want, set it aside, designate it for Shabbat. Be ready for Shabbat, because you're not going to have it the next day. Of course, some people went out the next day looking for man, and Moshe got very angry because they didn't listen. But there's a big inyan to be shomer erev Shabbat also, and that's related to this Gemara. So good. So melota se malacha amarle. So he says back, V'ha'atu, you're telling me muksa is deraisa, but it's you yourself, that you told me, By minei Rav Chistav, Amrle by minei Rav Huna. You either ask Rav Chista or Rav Huna about bringing a say. This is a beautiful Gemara. Heavy say me'afar. You brought a say from the pasture. Shchato tamid, and you shechted it as a tamid b'yom tov, on Yom Tov. Mahu, is that okay? So what would be wrong with taking a say from the pasture and bringing it as an ola on Yom Tov? What's the problem? Because they already had set aside karbanos ola. We learned a while back in Tamidim, and we were talking about the Beis Hamikdash. They had 4 animals at all times prepared and set aside for carbon ola. You only need 2 per day, but they had extras, and they were preparing them really for the next day. They were checking them because they had to be examined, that they weren't a treifa, that they didn't have a mum, so they had to be prepared and examined. So they had 4 animals at all times ready to go for carbon ola. So they had these from Erev Yom Tov set aside for Yom Tov. But here, what's he doing? He's going outside to the afar. Afar is the field, the pasture, the dirt, and he's getting another say, a say that was not set aside, a say that was muksa. It wasn't mezuman, it wasn't prepared for Yom Tov, and he's shechting that as a tamid. Is that a kosher tamid? Is that okay? And you told us, you answered this, Rabbi. Rabbi, you say that muksa is deraisa, but you told us that this was going to be okay. How? You said Allah, Amad Lan Allah, you said about this, se. What is the pasuk says? Se. It says the whole pasuk says se achat minatzaun min hamatayim mimashke Yisrael lemincha ol ola v'lishlamim lechaper aleihim neum Hashem Elokim. This pasuk in Yechezkel, and Chazal we're going to see has a drasha. Every word in this pasuk is important to teach you what kind of animal you're going to bring as your ola. Se v'lo habachor. You bring a se, but not a bachor, because a bachor is kodesh merechem, like we said, by the fellow plowing with his holy cow, with his bachor and his chamor together. Achat, one, a singular one, v'lo meiser, not me'eser or meiser, because meiser is 1 in 10. You have to count 9 animals before you get to your meiser behema, your 10th one. There's a beautiful vart about that. It would be easier, right, if just to count your animals. Count your animals. You have 900 animals. You have 1,000 animals. Just count your 1,000 animals and then take out 100 of them. What's the problem? Because you feel a big loss that way. But if you're counting, 1 for me, 2 for me, 3 for me, 4 for me, 5 for me, 6 for me, 7 for me, 8 for me, 9 for me, wow, 1 for Hashem also, 1 for Hashem. Then you feel, Hashem gave me 9 animals. Of course I'll give Hashem 1 animal. So that's a better way of accounting than, well, the accountants might correct me, but then just counting up all your animals and taking 10% off, that looks like a big loss. But if you're counting them, 1 through 9 for me, okay, 1 for Hashem, it's easy to let go of that and say, Baruch Hashem. Hashem gave me 9, at least I gave him 1. That's beautiful. So this is achat v'lo meiser, minatzaun v'lo palgas, from the flock and not a palgas. A palgas is an in-between. We translate that as an adolescent. Rashi says what's going on is, minatzaun lo kolatzon miyutachu lahotzi palgas. This palgas is this half and half animal. We were learning about the Beis Hamikdash and the Karbanos. It's yatsa miklal kevis. It's no longer a calf. It's no longer young. It's not really in the first year. L'kol ayil lobad. It's not a mature ram either. So it's no longer a young one. It's not an old one. Hinukol chodesh shoshasar. This is the 13th month. So this is an animal that's 12 and a half months old. It's in the 13th month of life. It's what we would call an adolescent, or the terrible teens. So we don't bring it as an offering because it's out of year 1 and it's not yet into year 2 because it hasn't had a full year of life in year 2 of its being an ayil, being a mature animal. Lo palgas, taking it to the top of memches, mina masayim, and 1 in 200. Rashi says now we're going about nisachim. Nisachim, if it's what's going on is al kerchech nisachim kai. This is top Rashi. Kamar haviyu and nisachim alav mina matayim, from 1 in 200. Sheish tayim matayim bevor yain. You're leaving 200 because if it's truma, it'd be batal 1 in 200. You can't take your truma as a nesach. It has to be your own wine. So you've left 200, so it's not a truma or an orla. Mimoter shtei meos. You've left 200 behind. Shishtayir bevor become the orla shebetela b'matayim. So now you know that orla is batal in 200 because you can't use your orla grapes for the nesachim, for the wine libations on mizbech. Mimashke Yisrael, and it's from the drink of Yisrael. Yechezkel says, Mina mutter Yisrael. It has to be something that's mutter for Jews to eat. You can't bring a treifa, you can't bring something not kosher. Mikan amru ein mevi nisachim mina tevel. You can't bring tevel as nisachim. Yachol lo yavi mina muksa. You might have thought this pasuk also includes muksa. That was the whole kasha. So you're bringing this, Rabbi, you tell me muksa is deraisa. You taught us this drasha on this pasuk in Yechezkel, and it might have thought you could not bring a muksa. Amrad ma tevel miyucha she'isur gufa. Tevel is, of course, mixed. The truma and the meiser haven't been taken. It's untithed produce. Miyuchad she'isur gufo garam. The isur of itself causes the problem. Garam lo causes the problem to it that you can't bring it on the mizbeach. Af kol she'isur gufo garam lo. So too anything that the problem is inherent to this item. So if it's untithed produce, untithed wine, the problem is inherent to that item. Yatsa muksa, this excludes muksa, shein isur gufo garmlo. That's not an inherent problem in that animal or in that item. Ela isur davar acher garmlo. But rather it's an external factor. It's the fact that you haven't brought this behema into the temple and set it aside for the olah. That's what's causing the problem, not the problem in the animal itself. So this is we're going to see more tomorrow, but this is the kasha he has on Rabbah. You tell me that muksa is deraisa. I'm telling you no, because you told us this whole drasha that you have to have a lot of qualifications for the animal and for the nesachim on the mizbeach, but muksa isn't one of them. So muksa isn't an inherent disqualification, so you can't tell me that muksa is deraisa. So good. So we're still on the topic of chayil side, but we've had a lot of had halacha lemaisa, we've had some hashkafa and some musar about the concept of chayil, and we will continue on that tomorrow. Shkayach.